after the first term of the presidency, when all we wanted, the general was growing old. We almost lost him twice to illness during that first term. He wanted to come home. Mr. Jefferson said, oh, everyone wants to go to their home. I want to be my beloved Monticello, but I will stay as you must do your duty, as if he could advise the general. And then after the next term began, he went home. He never kept his word on anything else, so I don't know why the general. I've never liked him, and I will be honest there. I've often thought his character to be very wanting. I suppose I never would have spoken really well of him. But after the last treachery and the way he turned against his president, he deserves none but scorn. And you will find that I protect the general. If you go against him, I will cross you off my list. And his treachery has been very public. He came home from France, late of course, to do his duty as Secretary of State, and cried out for the mob in France. Oh, he wanted to live like one of the poor. He himself was attired in the most elegant French laces and silks I've seen. I first heard of him in the early days when he was a boy, when his cousins, the Randolphs I knew in Old Williamsburg, hung their head in shame as he left debts all over the city, you know. And he had bankrupted himself yet again in France, returning with 400 crates of luxury goods and wine. He did not live as the poor he spoke of. But though he himself has never smelt the gunpowder, he wanted the general to take us to war in France, and the general knows that all of Europe is a powder keg. He refused to take us to war. The closest Mr. Jefferson ever came to the bullets was when, as governor, he got word that the enemy was headed towards Richmond. And then he waited till the cover of night and slunk out to the stable, saddled his horse, and rode like a coward for home. Fine one to urge to war when you yourself are such a coward. The general, though, held out on his principle, and indeed the general has written a warning for our country for the future. In the general's own words, he has written, we must be very wary of what he calls future foreign entanglements. Or he writes, for our country to become entangled in the internal affairs of foreign nations could be ruinous. But because the general refused to take us to war, Mr. Jefferson wrote terrible things about him and had them published in the newspaper. Coward that he is, he pretended the words were not his own, till James Callender, that scurrilous newspaper editor in Richmond, confessed the truth. And you can understand how I feel. For the general, though, the greatest treachery came with the creation by Mr. Jefferson of this second opposing political faction. And therein the general feels the seeds are sown for great trouble for our country. For as General Washington has written, seeing already in the second term how these two parties have tangled up the Congress in an awful web of partisan rancor, he has written, two political parties at odds with one another will never serve the best interest of their country ahead of their own selfish partisan interest. Couldn't get anything done in the Congress at all because of it. So I only hope that in the future, if it continues to be a trouble, everybody knows exactly who is to blame. The initials are T.J.